Everybody. It's the Mike and Dave show, and we're carrying on doing what we love doing, just shooting the breeze around different topics that could be of, or that we hope are of huge relevance for this time in which we're in. And yesterday we spoke quite a bit about fear and courage, and I think we can sort of sum it up that that courage is definitely not the absence of fear, but it's moving forward in spite of fear. And then we got onto a little bit of a space around agile thinking. And Dave, I don't know about you, but I really, really love the term agile thinking. It's quite a new buzzword, but is our thinking elastic, agile, or is it possibly set in its ways? And so something to throw at you, because I know this is quite a favorite spot of yours. I remember doing some sort of innovation type workshops with you many, many years ago.
Yep.
And how would you support or help somebody to, maybe, if we use the old cliche, think out the box?
So, couple stories then, I guess I'll throw at it. There's a Diane, what's her name? Diane Burser, I think her name is. She was a famous photographer, and she was famous because when she would take photos, everything would be perfect. You know, the frame would be set up absolutely right, the aperture and all of the good things about taking a picture. She was known, Diane Arbus, that's her name. She would be known for the composition of this photo being perfect. Then one day she left her camera on the floor, and a 3-year-old grabbed hold of the camera. And this 3-year-old started taking pictures, you know, willy-nilly, as it were. She didn't know this until she got to our dark room, and she was doing, and as these pictures started to develop in front of her, they were anything but perfectly framed. They were all over the place, you know, taken some out of focus, some in different things. And so she hung them up, and she thought she'd do an experiment. She thought she'd actually hang some of them in her gallery the next time she did a show, and alongside her normal stuff. Well, which of the photos do you think outsold the others? Suddenly, and she learned this phrase, I had to learn not to be careful. And it was a brilliant phrase. In fact, a number of people have written books about it. Her thinking and as a result, her creativity and all of her strengths, etc., were guided by this particular narrative, or what we would then call a paradigm of thinking. And so she needed something to come and break that paradigm, which completely changed the way she started to think. Of course, her creativity was expanding quickly, and she started going into and I often teach entrepreneurs when they're looking at reimagining things that it's ready, aim, fire. And I often talk that it's actually ready, fire, aim. Sometimes you just need to start sending stuff out there, and then the actual target will find itself. So what this is really talking about is a word that I like to talk about called paradigms. Paradigm is a set of rules that we construct that give us success. So if you're going to cross the road in England or in South Africa, you look right, and then you look left, and you look right again. But if you do that in America, you're going to get killed, because the paradigm only works when the cars are on a certain side of the road. If the cars are on a different side of the road, the paradigm no longer serves its purpose. And what's fascinating about where we find ourselves when we talk about reimagining, rethinking, suddenly the paradigm, the rules are changing. Where you might have been successful in having one-on-one meetings, or shaking someone's hand, or opening a coffee shop, or doing it a certain way, suddenly we're forced to think about things in a different way. And we then have to break what we call the paradigm, the rules of success, or we have to leave the camera on the floor and let the 3-year-old take the pictures, or, you know, we have to learn not to be careful. So that's, I think, is the beginning of this conversation, is, are we able and willing, and maybe you, Mike, could talk about some techniques that help us break these patterns, these paradigms of thinking.
Yeah, it's quite strange, Davey. So based on what you said, there's a bit of a link to what we spoke about yesterday, and it's fear again. So fear of the 3-year-old doesn't have fear. So he doesn't even know what he's doing. He just puts it out there. And so possibly one of our biggest stumbling blocks to creativity is a fearfulness to think in new ways, to try different things. So I really like that, just based on what we said yesterday. All right, some techniques. So this isn't a rocket science one, but I think a really good technique is to set yourself a target for crazy ideas, or for ideas. Let's just talk about them as ideas. So here's an interesting one. We are here, late April 2020, and what could be a stimulus for creative thinking is to make what-if statements. So a what-if statement could be, what if in November 2020 we don't need to wear smart pants because all you see is my shirt.
Trousers for those in the UK.
Yeah, so what if, but you actually set yourself a target for what if statements, and you just begin to go. Now you need to set the target greater than about 5 or 6, because generally your first 7, 8, 9 ideas are probably what we're going to call default ideas.
Yeah.
It's the common stuff. It's the stuff that you would just think about. The treasure is potentially in ideas 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, idea 30. Because here we're having to grapple and we're going beyond the default. So what helps me is a target that you put out there that stretches you beyond your default ideas.
Yes.
Does that work for you?
Absolutely. And I think you have to press through those, when you're setting, so we're going to start with a blank piece of paper. We talked about Tom Peters' circle of innovation. You remember, where he just bolted on stuff on something existing, but actually what needs to happen is if we're going to think about this, what does the world look like after this? We need a blank piece of paper. And you're right, the first 10 things you're going to write in the paper would have been informed by the old paradigm.
Yeah.
Now we need to go through and we need to have it informed by something else. So what I'm going to throw a question back at you in a minute is, what are some of the things that inform the things that we're going to put on the piece of paper? If it's not the old paradigm, what should be informing these new ideas that we're putting on the piece of paper? And it is about the ability to push through the first 5, 6, 7 ideas and then get into the really good ones, But Mike, what are some of those things that would inform these new ideas then, that would help us?
Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, it's almost stimulus that you want to create that take you out the old paradigm. I think the first thing is just the acknowledgement that if we set the target that the first 10 ideas are going to be old, and that you then are going to be the old default, and then you're going to have to dig deep in. But sometimes what can be very useful in a creative way of thinking is just certain objects that begin to prompt the stimulus, pictures, other thoughts. So you might even just pick up my glasses here and would maybe say, I wonder what might be the impact on glasses in the new normal. And just by doing that, I think sometimes we battle with creative thinking because the canvas is just too big. But if you put something on the canvas, it can begin to create thought. So that is definitely a bit of a technique to try and help you move beyond just some of the normal stuff that's coming. I'm then also a big proponent of creative thinking being something that is aided by distraction. So I love to work in coffee shops, and I've always surprised myself that my best work is not necessarily done in isolation in a very, very quiet place. I find my best work is done with an element of distraction where you're busy working and you're focusing on something, and then you're distracted and you look at a new patron that comes in. Your mind maybe thinks about the funny shirt he's wearing. You go back to your work, and suddenly you're finding yourself with a new idea, with a new thought. Yes. And there's some interesting social science around this, but we'd have to explain this probably in another podcast. But procrastination is actually the friend of creativity. So they're looking up, seeing what's going on, coming back, sleeping on something. So you go to bed at night and you maybe ask yourself a question. I wonder how the world will look in November 2020. And then
I,
you try to forget about it.
I can really actually bear testimony to that, because when I was in the ministry, I would plan my sermon in two ways. I would write the framework of the sermon out on the Monday morning.
Yeah.
And then I would just let the entire week, it just percolate with all sorts of thoughts and ideas. And usually by the time it got preached on the Sunday, it was completely different to what I initially started on the Monday. But even though the framework was still the same framework, it was just completely different with its. And I think you're right. These things need time. Just like cooking something needs time, the right amount of heat, the right amount of time, the right amount of seasoning in there to create something that's new and fresh. We also need, when we are putting stuff on paper, we need people that can come and challenge, steer. Why do you think that? Why is that red? Why can't that be yellow? Your thinking is, why can't it be that? Sometimes we need people to actually make us almost unstable, knock us off our balance, think about things slightly differently, look at it slightly differently. My wife does that for me a lot, because she's an artist, and she looks at things very differently than I do. And it's amazing what else you see.
Yeah. And I think that's the power of thinking together. But what we don't want is groupthink. So groupthink is where everybody thinks the same way and they're almost like robots. But where we have diverse thought, and it can be very, very uncomfortable, because if you think you've got a great idea and somebody genuinely believes that it's not great, it takes you deeper. There's a professor, Charlene Nemeth. She wrote a book called No. And in the book, No, the essence or the primary argument is that thinking goes deeper when somebody says no. But it's not a devil's advocate, because a devil's advocate is actually somebody who's saying yes but is pretending to say no.
Yes.
The true no, even if that person is wrong, takes you deeper, it makes the argument stronger. And some interesting research was done by them. The challenge is, in many an organization, we don't want the person who says no.
Yes.
Because
that's right. We need that push and pull, especially when we're talking about reimagining things. How could my life be? Which is a great question. It's the what if question. I think we talked about it yesterday. If failure wasn't an issue, if I had all the money in the world, what would I attempt? If you knew that you had all the money in the world and you couldn't fail, what would you attempt? These are great questions. Asking these big questions of us. Suddenly think, okay, well, what would I do? What could I attempt? How big can I dream? And I think the older you get on the life, the smaller your dreams become, unfortunately. And I think I certainly would like to change that trend.
Yeah. I think if I could, the biggest bit of advice that I would say to people is ask the right question and just stay with the question. And when I say stay with the question, get distracted, leave it alone, come back to the question. I wonder how many organizations have said to their people, or how many managers or leaders have said to their people, here's the question we are going to wrestle with for the next month. And I'm not looking for a quick answer. Every time you have lunch. So what would remarkable, one of our favorite questions, Dave, what would remarkable look like in November 2020? I'm not looking for a quick answer. I want you to feast on. And once we get through the first 10 answers and we get through default, we're probably going to find something magical.
I love
but
that.
There's an interesting challenge to anyone who's listening here. Have you honed in on a transformational question that all your people are daily just going back to?
I love that. I think we do that. We set a question and we move off it too quickly. We don't get down to the really earth of this. We don't earth ourselves into what are we trying to do. And I think that comes out of a real desire to reimagine what the future can be. And so, you know, I think the challenge out of this webcast today is, how committed are we to uncovering what a new life could be? Are we willing to do the work to reimagine the future, so that when the lockdown comes off and we do our new thing, that we are already prepared, we already have some sense of what the new could be? I think that's a real challenge for us all.
Yeah. Nice.
Good. Thanks, Mikey, again for a great podcast. And we'll pick this theme up again, I think, tomorrow and see where we go.
Yeah, I think we've just touched the surface on many of these things, Davey. So we'll probably need to come back to some of these and just go a little bit deeper.
Let's do that.
I think we were like a shotgun. We were just shooting ideas out there in a way. But
all right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We'll chat to you soon.